Hey everybody, it's Mike with Neck on Tech. Today I'm reviewing a device I've been looking forward to seemingly forever, the AYN Odin 2, and my friends, it did not disappoint. This is the handheld, the AYN Odin 2. I went with the white, but it also comes in black, gray, and some lovely translucent purple and blue options. Much like the original, the device was first sold through an Indiegogo campaign, and to the delight of backers like me, was delivered a full month ahead of the expected release. The Odin 2 comes in 3 different power variants with differing amounts of RAM and storage. I went with the max version, 16 gigs of RAM and 512 gigs of storage, because it makes me feel safe and warm. The base currently retails on AYN's website for an extremely reasonable $299, the mid-level Pro at $369, and the Max for $459. The great news is that no matter which model you land on, you're getting the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 processor, which I'm sure many of you have read about or used and realize is an emulation and mobile gaming monster. And for me, that was the appeal. I've been waiting for a handheld that could smoothly handle the entire PS2 catalog because as an early 2000s teenager, the PS2 was the console that made me fall in love with gaming, and there are so many classics on the PS2 that I love to return to. Let's throw those specs on screen to give you the full picture. The 6-inch 1080p LCD screen running Android 13. It's got 65 watts of quick charging, juicing up an 8,000 milliamp battery. It does have a micro SD slot for expandable storage, which is great if you get one of the smaller storage variants, and even if not, an HDMI display port out, as well as the USB-C port on the bottom, and a headphone jack, because why not? It weighs in around 420 grams, which is similar to the Switch OLED, and a full 200 grams lighter than a Steam Deck, but definitely not a flyweight. I want to point out that thanks to some very thoughtful ergonomics, the design does feel pretty well balanced, and I don't have any trouble holding it for long periods. Rather than place it next to either of the devices I just mentioned, here it is next to my Retroid Pocket S2 Plus. You are welcome. The controls themselves are fantastic, and depending on your hand size, you'll likely feel very comfortable with the placement of the analog triggers, the clicky buttons, and those lovely drift-resistant Hall sticks. It even has a couple easily mappable macro paddles on the back. One of the design features I didn't expect to care much about were the LED lights around the sticks and the sides of the Odin, because I typically will skip that kind of thing to save battery, but the customizable nature of the lights with color and brightness, combined with the pretty chunky battery of the device, meant I had them on a fair bit, and it was a cool touch in a dimly lit room. And speaking of customization, you can set the fan speed to match your cooling needs. There is a high performance mode that will keep it humming, but I leave it in smart to let the system decide, and I've honestly never had it kick on for more than a few seconds. Performance-wise, you can make some assumptions based on the title of the video, but this thing is a beast. Thanks to that Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, it can handle anything that you can imagine that's built for Android. And if remote play is your jam, then you can expect it to perform really well there too, with both Series X and PS5, with the usual network caveats. But for me personally, and I'm sure for many of you watching this video, the Odin 2 is going to be an emulation handheld with the flexibility of Android and enough power to fuel your nostalgic fantasies for retro gaming. It can, of course, tackle the original systems like NES and Sega Genesis. I myself occasionally dip into those on RetroArch if I have a few minutes to kill. But as I mentioned up top, where other handhelds have let me down is by falling short on full-on PS2 performance. And friends, the Odin 2 is an absolute superstar as a mobile PlayStation 2. I run it through my full catalog, which, if you know me well, is a lot of sports games, but I assure you that as long as you're rocking the proper ROM, the Odin will run without frame drops, and most often at least at 2 or 3 times the resolution of the original. How good does Need for Speed Underground look with those glistening metallic ground effects? Whew. A good portion of credit does have to go to the recently discontinued king of PS2 emulation software, Aether SX2. It is no small feat to make that architecture sing on Android. I could go on for hours about how well this device does with my favorite retro system, but that's not necessary. You can trust that the Odin 2 is up to the task, and if you have questions about specific games or just want to watch me play Transworld Surf on a stream, go ahead and leave a comment below. My Max Indiegogo package also came with the Odin carrying case, which is pretty nice and is very much worth it for the $12 that it retails for, and the Super Dock for direct output over HDMI or USB-C, and that works smoothly as well. You can definitely find cheaper docking stations out there, but if you're pairing an external controller and throwing it up on the big screen, if that's your use case, you'll be happy with how the Odin 2 runs in that scenario. All right, to wrap it up, I am a massive fan of this device, so the things that I love section was easy. To reinforce the main point, it is a PS2 emulation rockstar. It has a high build quality with excellent ergonomics, snappy Android performance thanks to that Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, and thoughtful design touches like the customizable LED lights and active cooling really round it out into a nice handheld package. Things I love less, this was tougher because the Odin 2 for me is the new gold standard in handheld emulation, but if I'm being picky, I wouldn't mind shaving a few grams off that weight, and I guess the volume rocker placement could be better. But those are honestly reaches and the only even remotely negative things I can say about the AYN Odin 2. In terms of a buy recommendation, I wholeheartedly suggest you pick one up. And for most of us, that Pro model in the middle is going to have more than enough power. But I'm confident that no matter which model you grab, you are going to adore the Odin 2. That's going to do it for now. Thanks so much for checking the video. Likes and subscribes are always appreciated, but I am not the boss of you. Until the next time I turn the camera on, take care of yourself and the people you